I met my wife in 1963 in Tacoma, Washington. At the time, she had 2 children. It's the reason my mother wouldn't accept her. She was divorced with children. About November of that year, I could see she was having a really hard time, scribbling on paper and throwing it away. We would go bowling and she would scribble on the bowling sheet, and it was just a nightmare. So for some reason, I picked up that piece of paper, and it looked like an image on it. In a mirror, I could see there was writing on that piece of paper. Honest to God, I know people won't believe this, but when I put that piece of paper up, it said, "Believe in me, I am the Christ." I took that paper and I just caught my wife and I told her we're going, and we went to find a church. I went to the Russian Orthodox Church, there was nobody there. I went to the Catholic Church, nobody was there. I went to a Presbyterian church and no one was there. We went by a Episcopalian church and a minister was coming out. So I asked him, I said, "Would you please, can we go in and talk to you? My wife needs to talk to somebody." So we went in, and my wife immediately went into the parish and sat and knelt down at the altar. I was talking to the priest, so I kind of explained to him, and he was looking. I gave him the piece of paper, and he was confused. I said, "Put this up to a mirror and tell me what it says." He dropped the paper, and he put on his whatever, I don't know what you call it, to get to Mass. And he went in, he had a full service for my wife and I. And he came out later and he said, "You know, Dan," he said, "I don't always feel that God is in my church when I'm here." But he said he's here now. We finally made up our mind. We got married in December, and we were married for 54 years. And I miss my wife, I'll tell you that. I don't miss the last 6 months or the last year, but I miss the first 53 years of when she was healthy. Alzheimer's is a terrible thing to live with and to go through. It really hurts when they don't even know you, and you can't kiss them, you can't hold them, they don't know you, they don't want anything to do with you, and the terrible part is they hate the person closest to them for some reason. My wife loved everybody but me, and that's a terrible part of the disease. I would like to tell everybody how I ended up in the Casada Baptist Church. I was raised as a kid in the Russian Orthodox religion. We went to church every Sunday. I took communion and said the prayers for being bad every month. Went home, and that was it. My parents never once did we talk about Jesus or God at home. We did not have a Bible. It's just one of those things. And that's one of the problems that I have to take with me to the grave, because I feel, through ignorance, I guess, that I never discussed religion, God, Jesus with my children. I know they all believe in God, and one is like me that believes in Jesus. But it's my fault. My parents never did that. My youngest daughter had to go through a conversion rate to be a Roman Catholic. And her husband is very strict. So when she was going through this process, one of it was a priest said, "Sherry, I've got to call your dad and talk to him." And my daughter said, you don't want to talk to my dad about me becoming Catholic. And he said, "Why?" I said, "Just don't call him. He doesn't like Catholics. He doesn't think the Pope should be between you and God." So anyway, the guy did call me, and we had an hour and a half conversation. And I told him, "What you did to my son-in-law, my future son-in-law, is you wouldn't let him take communion or anything while he was dating my daughter. So you're saying something was wrong with my daughter that kept him from taking communion because she wasn't a Catholic at that time. I said, that's wrong. You deprived him of God because he was dating my daughter, and I resent that. Right now, I'm telling you right now, if I had my way, she would not be a Catholic. She'd be a Christian. I said, I'll tell you a story. I said, my maid in Thailand used to always say, Master, are you Catholic or Christian? Now I understand what she was saying. And at the end, he got off the phone and he told my daughter, he said, I wish I hadn't called him. But I had to tell him how I felt. I'm sorry. Deprive somebody of God because they're going with my daughter? No. That's not good for me. And my other one, my middle daughter, is more, I don't think it's Catholic or any kind of religion like that. It's the Indian type where they have worship for the ground and the sky and all that. I know she believes in God, but I'm not sure about Jesus. And I'm not sure about my oldest daughter. She's going through PTSD because of the war and having a hard time. So I'm not sure of her. And I feel bad, and I'll take that to my grave, that I never talked to him about God and Jesus. I feel bad about that. Just before my dad passed away, my sister took him to a Billy Graham revival meeting. And that's the first time my dad, I think, ever talked about Jesus in his life. But that's how I grew up. I had a lot of hate in my heart. When my dad passed away at 80, my mother, unfortunately, I know you honor your dad and your mom. It's hard to honor my mother. She never met my children. She never met her grandchildren. And she never met my wife until my dad was dying. At the funeral at the end, I told my sister, because they don't have a lot of money, take the house, the car, whatever money, I don't want any of it. All I want is 2 old weapons that my dad and I used, an old shotgun and an old Remington 97. Not worth a lot of money. I said, but they had a lot of meaning to me. After the wake, my mother and my sister decided that my nephew should get those for something to remember their grandfather. Well, it would have been fine, but he came outside and offered to buy me a shotgun, not knowing what he really meant by that. The hate was there for my whole family from 1980 till 2017 when my wife passed away. I finally realized that hate only affected me. It didn't affect the person I hated or my family, and I was missing out on a lot. So I decided to go home to Pennsylvania, talk to my sister face to face and say, here's what, and it's over. I don't hate you. I love you. And I talked to her son and said the same thing. My hate for you is gone, and it's the whole reason I did that was the church. I finally figured out. I was going through the Bible study. I got a small group, and one of the first, I'd say maybe the third lesson was on how to forgive somebody, and it affected me a lot. So that's where I am. How I found the church, I had to stay pretty close to my wife. I couldn't go outside. My grass, I was afraid my dog would go out there and get lost in the grass. So I got a card in the mail saying that somebody had hired this guy and he was going to come and cut my grass for me. So anyway, it was going to be on a Friday, and the guy did not show up on a Friday. So on Saturday, I said, hon, I've got to find these people, because if they're not going to do it, I've got to go out there. So I went to Phil and Deborah. They're also Baptists, but they go to a different church. And I said, was this from you? And I want to thank you. He said, no, it wasn't from us. It had to be from Deborah and Ken. So I went over to see them, and they said they weren't supposed to know it was from them. I said, look, it's, it's one of the nicer things people did for you. So I really appreciate it. And they said the guy would be down there tomorrow, and he was. And he took care of that for me. So really nice. When my wife passed away, I had a sort of a night of reunion, celebration of life. And I called the Bird family, Ken and Deborah, and asked them if there was somebody at the church to come over and say a blessing. I called Randy, and Brother Jim showed up, and he did a great job. My daughter from Orlando was staying with us, with me, so we decided on that Sunday to come over to church. So we're driving down this little road here, the first time I was here at the church, and I thought, well, maybe we don't have the correct address. I mean, we were lost. My daughter said, well, maybe we should turn around. And I said, no, we can't do that. It's got to be here. That's the risk. So I finally said, we'll go over this hill, and if it's not there, we'll turn around. Well, as you turn around the thing, there's the beacon on the hill. The church is there. So we found it. She went to the Bible study with me, and we went to church, and that's where I started going to the Casada Baptist Church. And I love it. And I'm trying to be a follower of Jesus Christ, even though I am a sinner. I know that. I'm ready. My birth certificate is in Russian. The English part is that I was born in Pennsylvania, but I was baptized at 21 days old, not years, days old. What can a 21-year-old day person know? Nothing. So since I found the Lord, it came here, and I decided to be baptized at 79 years old. I didn't know that you could do that, but I just felt like it was time to do that. I really feel comfortable in this church. The people are friendly. We have a group that go to lunch every Friday. We have Wednesday night, I sit with a certain family, and it's just, I feel very comfortable, and I'm very happy to be here. It's my church. And I'm going to stay for a long, long time until the Lord takes me away.